Which event in history will always be funny? Ancient Korea had special recording officials, whose job was to record everything. They were considered separate from the government, so the emperor of the time wasn't allowed to give them orders or tell them not to record something. Of course, some emperors would try anyway. On one occasion, King Taejong, 15th century, fell off his horse while hunting. The recorder nearby wrote it down. The emperor insisted that it be removed from the record, and even tried to have the report destroyed. This led to some nonsense as the emperor kept destroying their work, but the recorders kept copying it and hiding it in increasingly obscure places. And of course, recorded the whole thing as it happened. A few hundred years later, and the only thing that emperor is famous for is trying to hide the fact he fell off his horse. I picture some dude writing something like, at 11:35 a.m. on Sunday, the 9th of September the emperor fell off his horse. 11:37 emperor says, don't write that down. 11:39 emperor tries to take book from me. 11:43 emperor fell in mud chasing me telling, don't write that. 11:50 lunch is being set as the emperor cleans up. He is upset today. This has Major Terry Pratchett vibes. The con man who sold the Eiffel Tower twice and got away with it. The funniest thing is not only he sold it, he got a bribe out of it. In England, outside Bristol Zoo is the car park, with spaces for 150 cars and 8 coaches. It has been manned 6 days a week for 23 years by the same charming and very polite car park attendant with the ticket machine. The charges are £1 per car and £5 per coach. On Monday, June 1, 2009, he did not turn up for work. Bristol Zoo management phoned Bristol City Council to ask them to send a replacement parking attendant. The council said, that car park is your responsibility. The zoo said, the attendant was employed by the city council, wasn't he? The council said, what attendant? Gone missing from his home is a man who has been taking daily car park fees amounting to about £400 per day for the last 23 years. Total some £2.9 million. I remember this guy from the 90s. This is right up there with the guy who doesn't go to work for decades and only got found out because he won an award for his tenure and they couldn't find him. Please forgive me, I don't remember all of the details. I used to work for Sky TV and I was told there was a large team that was mostly made redundant, but one guy didn't report into that team like everyone else, so while the person that everyone assumed was his line manager left the business, he remained. He didn't have a boss or a department. He came to work, did stuff for other departments, but had no KPIs, no weekly meeting with a manager, nothing. He just did whatever he liked. He was on Easy Street. He worked whenever he wanted, took time off whenever he wanted. He fell through the cracks and nobody knew what he was up to, until he got caught stealing stuff from the canteen. That's when the company noticed him and he got fired. What a moron. Trading it all in for a packet of Skips. I listened to a podcast about a man who was hired during the Johnson administration for an assistant to the assistant's bureaucratic job in DC and was never given any responsibilities, job requirements, or anyone to report to. Each successive administration assumed he was a carryover from the previous administration and there for a purpose. He retired during Clinton's second term, and in an interview he didn't reveal his identity, but when asked why he didn't report his situation to anyone he said that there wasn't anyone to report to. And when asked why he didn't quit he laughed and said that the money was too good, he got periodic raises with a substantial retirement fund, and was able to take vacations anytime he wanted. When asked what he did to occupy his time he said that his office was tucked in the corner of one of the buildings and there was almost no foot traffic, but he always kept stacks of folders on his desk to give the impression that he was busy. He said that in the 70s he took correspondence courses and built a TV set, multiple Heathkits, took courses on how to become a CPA, how to be a tax consultant and numerous other classes. He said that during his 40 years at the job the only people he talked to were the security guards and janitors. It was an interesting and sometimes funny podcast to listen to, but after it was over I thought that it was either the truth or bullcrap, but given the way the government operates I put the odds at 51 to 49. During the Napoleonic Wars a French ship sank off the coast of Hartlepool, England. The only survivor was the captain's pet monkey, which he always dressed in a French military uniform. The locals freaked out because the law was that any French military found on British soil must be executed as a spy. So they ordered the standard punishment spies. death by hanging. Except instead of dying, the monkey just kept climbing up the rope. Because it was a monkey. Hartlepool has since embraced their failure at executing a tiny primate for military espionage. Their local football team is nicknamed the Monkey Hangers. I'm from Borough, and as kids we would go to a camping ground. One year a load of Hartlepool kids arrived at the same time. The local shops ran out of monkey and gorilla plushies and an inordinate amount of string. Most nights we would hang them outside the front of their tents. Trying to escape our camp, get to theirs and back unseen at 3 a.m. was awesome. Our camp leaders frowned on it but never stopped us. The Spanish chicken farmer Juan Pujol Garcia tried to become a spy for the MI5, but they rejected him. He then applied to become a spy for the Nazi SS, who accepted him. The SS gave him the order to start a spy network in London, but instead he set up shop in Lisbon. There, he started feeding the Nazi commanders a bunch of horsecrap intel, based on publicly available newspapers and magazines. They were believable enough for the Nazis to accept it as truth, even though they were completely made up. Every once in a while, he would be confronted about bad intel. He'd blame it on one of his fictional subordinates, and told his commanders he had rectified the problem. In one situation, he told the Nazis that his subordinate had fallen ill and later died. A fake obituary was placed in the newspapers to back his story up. He even convinced the Nazis to pay a pension to the, again, fictional, agent's widow. The MI5 became aware of his existence after they saw the Kriegsmarine waste considerable effort in hunting down a non-existing convoy, based on Garcia's, again, fake, intel. They enrolled him into their ranks, and that's when his bullcrappery started getting serious. He was given the nickname Garbo, in reference to the best actor in the world, Greta Garbo. Because the Nazis believed he was one of theirs, they even sent him an enigma to encode the messages he was sending them. It was promptly turned over to the codebreakers at Bletchley Park. His most important work was on Operation Fortitude. He helped convince Nazi high command that the invasion of Normandy was a diversion. Officers believed a larger army was due to land in Calais. For his efforts, he was awarded the Iron Cross, authorized by Hitler himself. Understandably, the medal was awarded via radio. He was then also given an MBE medal by the British King, making him one of the few people who received medals from both sides. He faked his death and fled to Venezuela after the war, where he then ran a bookshop. His secret identity was undiscovered until a journalist got interested in the story, and managed to track him down in 1984. He managed to finagle the real name from a former spy, and then found Garcia after literally calling every J. Garcia in the Barcelona phone book until he managed to get in contact with Garcia's nephew. The whole story is just so incredibly goofy. It's a prime example of, wait, that worked? When Persian King Xerxes punished the sea for ruining his bridge. He tried to build a bridge across the Dardanelles to get to Greece faster, but storm destroyed the bridge. Infuriated with the sea, Xerxes ordered his soldiers to punish it by whipping it with chains 300 times and poking it with red-hot irons. Handcuffs were also tossed into the water to symbolize the sea's submission to his authority. Literal embodiment of old man yells at clouds energy. Came here to say the same for Caligula. He supposedly got so mad at Poseidon that he had his soldiers march into the sea and stab at the water. King Canute, Viking ruler of England, Denmark and Norway, is said to have set his throne up on the shore and commanded the tide from coming in, and ended up getting his feet wet. Not as crazy as the other two, though. He was supposedly demonstrating this to someone who wouldn't stop telling him how powerful he was. This is hilarious in modern context, but at the time Xerxes was viewed by his people as a semi-deity, and if you look at his actions in that context it's more like a big PR stunt. If you're a god you can't sit back and let another god get away with busting up your bridge without some payback. Andrew Jackson taught a parrot how to swear and it had to be removed from his funeral because it upset the attendees. He also left a 500-pound, multi-year-old wheel of cheese in the White House for the new President Martin Van Buren to deal with. It was so pungent that they had to isolate it in a room and still the entire city could smell it. That reminds me of when 5 parrots in a zoo had to be separated because they kept encouraging each other to swear at the guests. Separating parrots out of zoos for swearing is just BS. Instead gather them all in a single place where only adults are allowed. I'd pay good money to sit in a bar with sweary parrots all around and pirate metal playing on the jukebox. The first thing that came to mind was an elderly Andrew Jackson, after an assassin's pistol misfired and then his backup pistol also misfired, proceeded to beat the man with his walking cane. I think Davy Crockett had to pull him off so he didn't beat the guy, who just tried to kill him, to death. In 1945 the Americans were pushing through Germany. General Eisenhower sent General Patton a message, instructing him not to take the city of Trier because it would require 4 divisions to seize the city. Patton sent a message back saying, "Have taken Trier with 2 divisions, what do you want me to do, give it back?"